I'm jumping to chapter 19 because there are some data here that we can just quickly take a look because this is more about reality. So this is about earnings and discrimination. So we'll look at how wages will compensate for differences in job characteristics. We'll look at education and look at discrimination and how can the market solve or not solve the problem of discrimination. But first we'll look at earnings across different disciplines or different occupations. This is US data. If you look at CEOs, weekly earnings is $2,291, although male earn 43% more than female. Lawyers, $1,947 weekly, but males earn close to 25% more than female. Physicians, surgeons, $2,001, but men have a close to 50% premium. Architects and engineers, 18% premium. Financial managers, 41% premium. Registered nurses, here it's less than 10%, but there's still a premium here. Post-secondary teachers, so professors, 28% premium. Counselors, less than 10%, but still 9.97%. Salespeople, 40% premium. Even waitresses, there's a 15% premium for overall 23% wage gap between male and female. So here I have Taiwanese data. Unfortunately, I don't have by position. I only have which category or which industry. So working at the bank, 8,700and 8,000块. So there you have a gap. If you work in the high-tech industry, so 30% premium. If you look at computer manufacturing, there's a 41% premium. But one thing I do want to say, so this difference could be driven from different positions because it's known that in the computer electronics industry, there are a lot of male engineers and female assembly line workers. And so this difference of 11,000 versus 6,500 could be driven by the difference in terms of different positions. And you see this even here for the finance industry. There's a anti-wage gap where female are earning slightly more than male. For professionals, 22% wage gap. In the health industry, 9,900versus 5,700, so there's a 42% wage gap. But one thing you should note here is that there are way more female in the health service. There are 315,000 female workers in the health service compared to only 81,000. And so this difference could be driven by doctors versus nurses. And it's even more evident for the airline business where you have a 11,500 versus 12,000. There's a more than 50% wage gap, but this could be driven by flight attendants versus pilots because it's known that EVA Air and China Airlines have these very few male flight attendants. Actually, EVA Air finally agreed to allow male workers to be flight attendants. I remember my last flight before the pandemic, I saw an intern flight attendant that was male. I was very happy to see that this gender inequality is being abolished. But the numbers here, because this is only by industry, it could be driven by position. Oh, okay, take a look at this one. Detective and security. So there are 80,000 male workers in this industry, but only 14,000 female workers. And actually the female workers earn 41K. That's higher than the male workers. So there's an anti-wage gap. But one thing you should note here is that it's likely that it's the male workers that are working as a security guards. So there are these other positions that are filled by the female workers in this industry. So take the Taiwanese data with a grain of salt. Hopefully our government can get better data over here. So the essence of next week's lecture is to talk about these wage differences. All right, so now we'll move to chapter 19. Okay, so chapter 19 is on earnings and discrimination. So we'll look at how different job characteristics would result in different wages. So, or how wages would compensate because some jobs are easier than other. And so now we see why some wages are high, some are low. And we'll look at how education can increase wages and some crazy above equilibrium wage. And then we'll look at discrimination and whether or not markets can solve discrimination. And if you remember, at the end of last week, we showed some of these numbers to show this gender wage gap across different occupations or positions. And we looked at some of these in Taiwan, although the Taiwanese data is not by position, but by which industry. So there are some problems here because you could have, like in the health service industry, doctors are mainly dominantly male, nurses are dominantly female, and so the gender wage gap could be just reflecting different positions. Or in the airline industry, it's the pilots that are dominantly male, and actually until recently, we finally got male flight attendants. So there's this explicit discrimination against male to be flight attendants in Taiwan. But so because of that, when you look at the gender gap data in Taiwan, you have to factor that into consideration. One thing I do want to show is this. Here we have some salary. And the key thing is that some of these electricity supply, which industry is this? Well, there's only one company in this business, or one dominant company, which is Taipower. So it's a governmentally owned utility. Gas, natural gas, 大台北瓦斯, or there are only a handful of these natural gas companies. Water supply, well, 台北自来水公司, 台湾省自来水公司, yeah. Again, these are governmentally owned companies. And other construction, bus and postal service. What you see here is that, for example, if you look at public bus, public transportation versus these other private bus companies, the workers in the public transportation or governmentally owned companies, they command a higher salary. But of course, you have to ask the question, is that just because the government is just paying out salary with taxpayer money and don't care about profit or efficiency? Okay, I think this is another one. I think we already saw this. So the high-paying industries we have here are the finance, insurance, securities, real estate. These are the salaries that you guys will be earning once you guys graduate, having an econ major or management major and so on. And of course, what that means is that if you're not looking for these jobs, then you would have a lower pay. All right, this is from another website that it tries to break down gender wage gap in Taiwan by education level. Middle school or below, high school, associate, some college, college degree, and graduate degree. And most of the cases you have male workers earning more than female workers. There are few exceptions, especially in real estate, or very little difference. But overall, you see the black circles are male earning more than female. And this is starting salary for all these various different industries. Okay, so in chapter 18, we saw that in a competitive market, the wage of a worker equals to the value of his or her marginal product. And so, but here we look at other factors that affect productivity and wages. So first is compensating differential. This is the difference in wages that arise from because there are unpleasantness or difficulty or how dangerous this job is. So for example, coal miners, they're paid more than other workers because compared to the similar education, similar experience, they're paid more because there's extra risk. Night shift workers, they're paid more because you have to work at night. Most people don't want a lifestyle like that. So this is compensating differential because your job is more dangerous, unpleasant, and more difficult, and so you're paid more. So this is education. In the US, when you go from less than high school to high school, college, some college, bachelor's to advanced degree, median weekly wage earnings go up monotonically. If you look at Taiwan's data, bachelor's degree is actually lower than some college or associate. One thing I'll have to note here is that this is likely due to the expansion of higher education in Taiwan in the past couple of decades. And so because of this, most young people don't have an associate degree anymore. Associate degrees holders are usually people older than my age. And what that means is that, of course, they are more experienced, they have other characteristics that they might have a high pay. But this is like a transition problem. So if you look at the numbers here, you'll see that median weekly earnings seem to increase as education level goes up. The only counterexample here is bachelor's degree in Taiwan. And as I said, it's likely because there's an expansion that the generation before me, only 10% of Taiwanese people hold a bachelor's degree. But at my age, my generation, it's 20%, and then it has gone up to 30% and beyond later on. So yeah, of course, here we're pulling all of the bachelor's degree people together, and if they are overwhelmingly young, then of course, because of experience or other characteristics, it may not be as high as the older generation who only have an associate degree. So why does education increase people's wages? Typically, we think of this as accumulating human capital. So human capital is this investment in people because of education or on-the-job training or skill building and all of that. And this, of course, would affect your productivity, and of course, this will affect labor demand and wages. So if you have specific human capital that everybody likes or that is productive, of course, that means that you would have a higher marginal product, hence higher demand and higher wages. So for highly educated workers, firms are willing to pay a higher wage because your more education means that you have more human capital, and hence you have higher marginal product. Yeah, so because of this, of course, if you're a worker, you are willing to pay the cost of education, because then by receiving this higher education, then in the future you get higher wages. One of the leading examples, if you think of the most popular majors in Taiwan, medicine, law, or finance, computer science, or electrical engineering, all of these majors provide training for people to become doctors, lawyers, bankers, engineers, programmers. So these are high-paid jobs. And of course, you can try to argue that you could learn to be a programmer or be one of these professions without a major in that profession. But of course, most of the time, a lot of these training require you to go through to get a major of that. So that's human capital. I think the closest you can think of is you could become a programmer without having a computer science major or being a EE major. And of course, if you know how to program various software, being a programmer, regardless of your major, you would command much higher wage than other disciplines. Okay, so survey question. One of the leading reasons for rising US income inequality over the past 3 decades is that technological change has affected workers with some skill sets different from others. Do you agree or disagree? And do you think economists agree or disagree? So do you agree or disagree? So one of the leading reasons for rising US income inequality over the past 3 decades is that technological change has affected workers with some skill sets different than others. Okay, so I see here that majority of the responses are agreement, but they're still uncertain and disagree. Now we'll move on to, do you think economists agree or disagree with this same statement? 100% agree, 50 to 99% agree, 1 to 49% agree, or 0% agree, or don't know. Okay, so your answers, the majority of you say 50 to 99%, some say 1 to 49%, and it is correct. So 88% of the economists surveyed agree with this statement, 8% not sure, 4% disagree. So yeah, basically this statement is in direct response to one of the questions that are raised at the end of chapter 18, that so does technological advancement increase or decrease labor demand? And it depends on if you're high skill or low skill. Because if you're a high skill worker, having better technology, that means that your marginal product will go up. But if you're low skill, then your job could be completely replaced. Okay, so when there is international trade, well, domestic demand for skilled labor goes up, but domestic demand for unskilled labor goes down because now you can outsource these jobs to foreign countries. And similarly, when you have skill-based technological change, then demand for skilled workers who can use these new machines or computer, the internet. Now, what's the next big thing? Metaverse, or I don't know. Whatever is the next new technology breakthrough, well, skilled workers will benefit from that, and demand for skilled workers will go up, but the demand for unskilled workers will actually go down because you are replaced. So when you have all these auto cars, taxi drivers will be someday completely replaced. All right, so this is US data comparing 1977 and 2017. So to look at the wage gap between college degree holders and non-college degree holders. And the wage gap has went up from 44% for male to 76% for male. For women, it's 31% versus 74%. So you see this widening wage gap. And so most economists think this is because of these skill-based technological breakthroughs. If you look at Taiwanese data, not quite. So data I have is 1992 versus 2019, especially for college graduates. But I think that's mainly because you have this expansion that happened. But of course, we really need labor economists to look into this data and to single out or to separate the effect of different factors to tease out, so is there really an increase in value of skills in Taiwan? Of course, the other possibility is that higher education in Taiwan does not really add human capital to people. Well, if you take all these easy classes, then you can graduate and not build up any human capital. So that could also be a danger here. Okay, so in addition to the things we talked about, compensation differentials, that's job characteristics, unpleasantness, dangerous jobs pay more, highly educated people pay more. There could also be ability, effort, and chance. These things would also increase people's pay. However, because if you have special ability, or if you put in way more effort, or you're lucky enough, of course, these will increase your marginal product. And of course, that means that the company is more willing to pay for you. Chance, actually, if you read the story of the Nobel Prize this year, there was this person who almost won the Nobel Prize, except that his research funding ran out, and so he couldn't continue the research. He helped follow up research by providing the technology or the initial discovery. And so the later researchers won the Nobel Prize, but this person already left academia and take on other jobs. In some sense, that's just chance that his or her discovery was not really appreciated at the time, or the funding just ran out, or he was unlucky in terms of applying for grants. Well, if you think of it, if you graduate during the year of the pandemic, well, it's likely that your career path will be affected by this because there are fewer job openings, more competition. I remember when I was in UCLA, so the year after the dot-com crash, there was a flood of EE majors applying for PhD because the dot-com industry is just collapsed. So these things are just by chance. It may not be because that you are smarter or you are more hardworking, or even if you're the smartest guy, but because of these chances, things may or may not work as you plan. But the problem is that these things are hard to measure. So how big is the effort on wages is not sure. What we do know is that observable characteristics like education, age, or things like that, those only account for 50% or less than 50% variation in wages. So ability, effort, and chance are important. But we really don't know. Okay, here's one interesting thing. Is beauty a plus to wages? This is research that people publish in American Economic Review. People deemed more attractive than average earn 5% more than the average looking people. And the average looking people earn 5 to 10% more than the below average looking people. Question, Is this discrimination? Here's the fun thing. You get similar results for men and women. So this is not just like, oh, so there are these male bosses that are discriminating against female. I mean, you have this beauty premium even for men. So if you're a handsome looking person versus a not so handsome looking person, so you have this beauty premium in terms of wages. And okay, so here are various interpretations. One is that good looks is an ability itself. Of course, if this is an ability that's going to affect production, then of course, being a handsome man or a pretty woman, this means that you are more productive and hence you command higher wages. This is likely true if you're in the movie business. If you're a movie star, I mean, you need a face that people appreciate. Or if you're in the model business, of course, you're an actor or a model. I mean, yeah, so there are some industries that this could be. Good looks are productive. So attractive workers are more valuable to the firm and hence they have higher wages. But the data that I just presented, I mean, the beauty premium is across various industries. It's just not only limited to acting or movie business. And so here, reported beauty could be an indirect measure of other abilities. So yeah, for example, if you dress well, instead of your hairstyle is moderate, instead of like, well, that could reflect some personality or at least you're attentive to detail. So the reported beauty could reflect something about you or these other abilities. You take care of yourself or you're attentive to detail or things like that. And because of the companies value these things, but they cannot observe it directly, but they use the reported appearance as a proxy to identify these other abilities. And of course, it could just be just pure discrimination. So the crazy boss, male boss that loves to be surrounded by pretty women, or the female CEO who wants these handsome men around her, or I don't know. I mean, that could also be. Okay, here's a Taiwanese study that I found that's very interesting, I should like to share. This is done in college. So she surveyed college graduates in Taiwan, and she found that height and weight are correlated with self-confidence. So higher and skinnier people are more confident of yourself in college, that's during college. And then self-confidence during college is positively correlated with higher starting salary. So for every centimeter you're higher, your starting salary increases by 50 NT dollars. And every kilogram lower you are, again, your starting salary increases by 50 NT dollars. But the key thing here is that self-confidence increases your starting salary by $1,100. So in this sense, it could be that beauty is an indirect measure of self-confidence. Well, I cannot see how confident you are, but it's reflected in your beauty. And of course, if you're a salesman or saleswoman, well, being confident is very important. I mean, you say, oh, my product is not that good, or this product is the definite product that you should definitely buy. I mean, yeah, so that could really be a change in marginal product. All right, so suppose you're offered this choice. Spend 4 years studying in the best university in the world, but you cannot get a degree. You have to keep your attendance a secret. Versus get an official degree from the world's best university, but you cannot actually study there. So which do you think would enhance your future earnings more? A or B? Okay, so which do you think would enhance your future earnings more? Spend 4 years studying in the world's best university, but you have to keep your attendance as a secret, or get an official degree at the best university, but you cannot actually study there. Okay, so let's look at your answers. So some of you say spend 4 years studying the best university. The other is to just get the official degree. Yeah, so there's no right and wrong answer here. But the key thing is that it reflects on what do you think is the value of college education. So the first option, spend 4 years, but you cannot get a degree, that gives you the human capital aspect of education because you learned a lot, you met a lot of good friends, you build up your human capital. But the other one is, Of course, now, if you actually do that, it's fraud, right? I mean, you claim to be studying NTU, but you actually did not really study NTU, right? But the key thing is that this gives you what we call the signaling value of education. So firms use education level to sort between high ability versus low ability workers. And so suppose being able to enter NTU and graduate with the NTU college degree is very difficult. Then getting this degree demonstrates that you are a high-skilled, smart person or a hardworking person so that you can actually enter NTU and graduate. And so because of this, even if the education itself has no human capital benefit, just seeing that you did this very difficult task helps the firm identify that you are a high-skilled worker, you are a smart person. And so they will give you a high-paid job. So this has a policy implication that increasing educational attainment would not affect wages because it used to be that getting a college degree means you're the top 10%, PR 90%. Now it's PR 70%, the top 30%. So you have much less signaling value. Well, there are real arguments in Taiwan that people argue that, oh, there are too many colleges. And that mindset is based on this theory, meaning that the only value of NTU degree is to show that you have a very good signal. I mean, you perform very well, say, in the entrance exam, 满积分 or whatever. I don't know. I mean, if that's the only purpose of college education, maybe you guys don't even have to stay 4 years in NTU, right? I mean, just take your college admission proof and go find a job. See, I'm able to enter NTU. See how smart I am, and that's enough. Well, I mean, some people really believe that. I mean, our Taipei mayor always brags about how smart he is just because he gets into NTU medicine. Now, whether or not he's truly learned something, that's another question. Okay, so what else could affect earnings? There's what we call the superstar phenomenon. So there are certain fields where you have superstars, like say Lin Zhiling in the model business, where the superstars get like astronomical income. Tom Cruise, the movie stars, I mean, they earn like crazy income. While the majority of the workers in that field earn peanuts. I mean, Lin Zhiling would earn millions of dollars, but the average model earns like the minimum wage. The superstars who win the Oscar they're paid a fortune, but the average actor earns the minimum wage. Actually, sometimes they don't earn anything at all because they get no job. And so you have this in markets where you have two characteristics. First, all customers in this market want to be serviced or to get the good supplied by the best producer. So you want to see movies made by Tom Cruise or Anne Hathaway or whatever movie star you like. The second requirement is that there is technology so that the best producer can actually supply and to make products to supply to satisfy the whole market at a very low cost. So that's why the movie industry is a leading example of this, because once you film a movie, you can show this to billions of people who go to the movie or now who subscribe to Netflix, Disney+, HBO, whatever online streaming service, and you can actually watch the movie. So the cost to provide this product to another customer is almost zero. And so you have this technology. So when everybody wants to see number one best producer's product, and the best producer has the technology to supply to everybody at a low cost, then you would have this superstar phenomenon. All right, what are other possibilities? There are what we call above equilibrium wage. One is because of minimum wage laws. So this is like a price floor. Minimum wage says that for the low skilled, the least skilled, least experienced workers, well, the equilibrium wage is very low, but you're not allowed to pay such a low wage because you have a minimum wage law that says you have to pay at least 160 NT dollars per hour. And of course, I mean, if you have a young worker or low skilled worker, it only has a VMPL that's only like say $100, you're not allowed to pay that. You have to pay at least this minimum wage. It could also be that there's market power from unions where they would bargain with firms and for higher wage. So in the US, what you get is that union workers get 10 to 20% more income than non-union workers. This is much less of a concern in Taiwan because we don't have that many powerful labor unions. We did raise the minimum wage in the past couple of years, so it has went up from close to 120 to now close to 200 NT dollars per hour. But then there's also this what we call the theory of efficiency wage. The idea is this: if I pay you above market salary, then first, you'll be very happy to work at my company. And if you do a crappy job and I fire you, you won't be able to find an equally high-paid job anymore. But because of that, you will do your job well. Because if you don't do well, then you're doomed. The leading example here is Costco. In the US, Costco is reported to pay twice the minimum wage, double the salary of, like, say, Walmart or these other companies. But because of this, Costco has the lowest turnover rate, or the lowest percentage of workers leaving their job. And what this means is that you don't have to recruit and train these new workers. And what's more, because these are such a high pay, so Costco workers, they would not steal from their company. Because if they get caught, they get fired, and then they won't be able to get such high pay anymore. And of course, it would also attract high quality job applicants because of this high pay. So this is what we call efficiency wages. And the effect of this above equilibrium wage is surplus. That means unemployment. Yeah, so in the labor market, a surplus or excess supply means that you have unemployment. Okay, so in each of the cases that I show here, which worker would earn more? Why? First, the best doctor on the planet versus one of the best actors on the planet. A trucker who hauls produce and one who hauls nuclear waste. C, college graduates of NTU or an equally intelligent and capable graduate from NTU ST. And someone who graduated from NTU with a 3.7 GPA or someone who graduated from the same university with a 2.4 GPA. Which one would earn more and why? Okay, first question. Best doctor on the planet versus best actor on the planet. Which one would earn more? Okay, so majority of you say it's the best actor on the planet, and that is the right answer. Next one. Which one would earn more? A trucker who hauls produce or a trucker who hauls some nuclear waste? Okay, so the majority of you say a trucker who hauls some dangerous nuclear waste, and you are correct. So let's take a look. Best doctor on the planet versus best actor on the planet. The key thing here is that the best actor can serve much more customers than the best doctor. The best doctor has to see everybody in person, and so the doctor cannot have millions of patients. But if you're a best actor, there is the technology through the movie or streaming services to service billions of people. So because of the superpower phenomenon, the best actor can earn more. A trucker who hauls produce or a trucker who hauls, say, nuclear power plant waste. Here, because of compensating differentials, because the nuclear power waste is high risk, it's more dangerous, so that trucker is likely to earn more. Next one, a college graduate from NTU or a equally intelligent and capable graduate from NTU ST. Which one would earn more? Okay, the majority of you say college graduate of NTU, and so that is the right answer. And next one, someone who graduated from NTU with a 3.7 GPA, or someone who graduated from the same university with a 2.4 GPA. Okay, so the majority of you say 3.7 GPA, and that's right. So from the signaling theory of education, employers assume NTU graduates have more ability than others, even though it's an equally intelligent and capable graduate from some other university. Well, I mean, whether or not it's true, but I mean, there is this perception. That's the whole point. The other one is having a higher GPA. This means that you have, here we're assuming that higher GPA reflects greater learning, higher human capital, and higher productivity. That is true if you're not just taking easy courses. I mean, if you're taking easy courses and getting A pluses that you don't have to pay any effort and you learn nothing, of course, that's problematic. Okay, so now we've seen all sorts of different reasons why wages could be different. Now we'll look at discrimination. Discrimination is to give opportunity to the similar people who differ by race, gender, ethnicity, age, or other personal characteristics. So this is what we call discrimination. And this could be a source of wage difference. Well, I mean, if there's discrimination against women, so women earn lower pay. That could also be. Here are numbers in Taiwan. So we'll look at, there's actually a narrowing wage gap in Taiwanese male and female workers. So the wage gap in 1976, when I was born, is 93%, but now it's narrowed to 34%. And actually, this is coming from wages more staggering for male and wage increase of female. So in the US, they talk about the median earnings for full-time white male is 23% higher compared to white females. So there's a gender wage gap. And then 35% more than Black or African American males. So there's a ethnicity wage gap. And 20% less than Asian male. And so taken at face value, say, hey, there's discrimination. Employers love Asians. They hate Black or African Americans. They discriminate against female. Wait, we have to rule out other possible explanations of these wage differences and to tease out this. So for example, different groups of workers could earn very different wages because of various reasons. There could be human capital differences. There could be compensating differentials. Let's take a look. So for example, if you look at the data in the US, 34% of the white population have a college degree, but only 24% of the Black population have a college degree. Do you want to know the Asian population degree? It's even higher in the US. Quality of public schools could be very different. In the US, public schools are funded not by the central government, but the local, like say the city or the county level. And so rich cities or rich communities would have high quality public schools, but poor communities would have low quality schools. And of course, that could affect human capital. What else? Human capital could be acquired because of job experience. But women are more likely to interrupt their careers because to raise children, for example. And then what that means is that women would have less on-the-job experience. If you look at the data in the US, population age 25 to 44, 25% of women are not in the labor force, while only 10% of men are not in the labor force. And because of this, there could be a human capital difference because of this difference in on-the-job experience. It could also be that men and women are choosing different jobs. And of course, compensation differentials would kick in here. If women are more likely to be, say, administrative assistants, and men would more likely be truck drivers, and you can say, oh, truck drivers are a more dangerous job, or it's an unpleasant job because you have to work outdoors instead of sitting in the office. And so different working conditions means that there could be compensating differential. Okay, so here's a very interesting study. Even though we're running out of time, I really want to share this. How can you control for all these different things? And so smart economists came out with this particular experiment. So they found more than 1,300 help wanted ads in Boston and Chicago, and they sent out resumes. They sent out 5,000 fake resumes. These resumes are in pairs. Half of the resumes had names common in the African American community, like, say, Lakeisha. And then the other half were names more common among white population, like Emily. So is Emily more employable than Lakeisha? And applicants with white names, even though they have the same education, experience, and all that, the only thing different in the resume were the names. White names received 50% more calls to invite for an interview. So here you're controlling for education, experience, and all that. The only thing is names. And you do see that employers prefer to interview applicants who have a white name. So compared to everything else, this is outright discrimination. There's no denial for this. And this is across all job types. So it's not just certain industries. Asian names, right? So there's a follow-up paper that studied the Canadian labor market. So they sent out fake resumes with English names, Indian names, Pakistani names, Chinese names, and Greek names. And again, you find significant evidence of discrimination. English-sounding names receive 39% more callbacks. And this is across all 4 ethnic groups. And okay, so if instead of Tao-yi Wang, I use Joseph Wang, I still have a Chinese last name, but I use Joseph as my English first name, that doesn't work. So people look at the last name. Although if you Google Joseph Wang, you will find that there is an American UC San Diego professor in nanotechnology that has the exact same name, and he's Jewish, so he's definitely not Chinese. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully Joseph Wang works. So here you see that there is ethnicity discrimination. Here you have a direct evidence that, so yes, there is ethnicity discrimination using this field experiment. Okay, so here's the problem. Suppose there's discrimination by these employers. So one group in the society receives lower wage than another group, controlling for human capital, job characteristics, just as you just saw. Who is to blame? Whose fault? It could be from the employers because they have this discrimination, but a market could try to fix this. Why is that? If this is coming from the employer. So suppose you have discrimination from the employer, so you have male workers and female workers. So some firms discriminate against female workers, so they would hire fewer females and more males. But what that means is that the labor demand for male is shifting to the right, and labor demand for female workers is shifting to the left. So that means that there is a wage differential between male workers and female workers. But what that means is if you are a non-discriminating firm, what you should do is to hire equally capable and intelligent female workers because they are cheaper. You have at a lower wage, and so you have a cost advantage in making a profit. So new non-discriminating firms will enter. What that means is that discriminating firms will be losing money because they have higher costs and they're facing this fierce competition from these non-discriminating firms, and so they will be driven out of the business. And because of that, so of course, demand for female workers will increase and demand for male workers will fall until wages go back to equal. So because of competition in the market, if this discrimination is coming from the employer, there is a natural antidote so the market competition is going to drive out these discriminating firms. They're going to lose money. Alan Greenspan, former chairman of the Fed, actually ran this consulting company that specifically hires female economists and, of course, exploiting this gender wage gap. Okay, but if discrimination is coming from the consumer, then that's a problem. Well, I mean, because suppose restaurants care only about maximizing profit, but customers prefer to be served by workers with green eyes. Then the restaurant has an incentive to hire workers with green eyes, even though non-green eye workers are willing to work for a lower wage. And you can't really fix that because it's the consumer taste. So if the discrimination is coming from the customers, then it's not easy to fix. Last time, we talked about discrimination by the employer, which could be solved by the market motivation. And then we talked about discrimination by the consumer. So if the customers prefer certain type of characteristics, then workers with that particular type of characteristic would receive a wage differential, a premium because of this. And so the example we gave was that if customers prefer being served by workers with green eyes, then of course restaurants would hire people with green eyes, even though people who do not have green eyes are willing to work for lower salary, but too bad. And it's not easy to fix this because this is stemming from preference of the consumers, which the firms, the restaurants do not have a handle on. Okay, and then the last part of this is we have discrimination by the government. So this means that some government policies require practices that are discriminatory. For example, in South Africa before 1990s, there was explicit segregation, discrimination, preferring white South Africans instead of black South Africans. And even in the US, there was these segregation laws for buses or streetcars in the first half of the 20th century, which of course now all of this is gone. But even back then, you see that the streetcar companies, they're actually against this policy because there is a profit motive to try to solve this. But of course, if this is mandated by law, you have to break the law in order to try to break this discrimination. And so the key thing here is that if this discrimination is done by the government, then of course that means the market cannot solve this because you're mandated by law to follow these regulations. Okay, so to summarize here regarding wage differentials, under a competitive market, workers are paid a wage that equals to their VMPL, or value of their marginal product. But of course, there are a lot of factors that would affect this value of marginal product, and of course, hence equilibrium wages. But of course, here we see discrimination. Discrimination could be cured by the profit motive, but if this is done by the employer, if it's the firms that are discriminatory, then yeah, so the non-discriminative firms would actually make more profit and hence drive out the discriminative firms. But if this discrimination is coming from the consumer or the government, then the profit motive cannot easily fix this. All right, so related to this is another notion called statistical discrimination. And so this looks like discrimination, but it may not be. Or it may not be as biased as you think. So the key thing here is that there could be some observable characteristics that are actually irrelevant, but are correlated with relevant but unobservable characteristics. So for example, here the key thing here is that employers have imperfect information about this prospective employee. And so you have to rely on what you can observe to sort of infer if this is the right employee you should hire or not. So the problem here is asymmetric information. So I only see what's on your resume, how you perform in the interview, but I can't really observe everything about you. So yeah, for example, employers would favor punctuality. I mean, if somebody's late every day for work, that's not good. But how do I know if a job applicant is punctual? Well, you can ask his or her former employers, but well, it's not clear if everybody will tell you the truth. And okay, so suppose that somehow, according to statistics, or like existing workers, so 20% of the workers with blue eyes are chronically late, but brown eyes, only 3%. So, I mean, eye color has nothing to do with what employers care about, but statistically, the employer knows this correlation. Of course, correlation does not mean causality, but, well, this could lead to employers hiring brown eyes and not hiring blue eyes. Okay, so the question here is, how can this lead to statistical discrimination? All right, so this is an open question, so please join us on Slido so that you can type in your answers. Okay, so let's look at some of your answers. You are still welcome to enter your answers as we go on. So employers will hire brown eyes due to information discrimination. I think it's called statistical discrimination, but you're right. They more likely hire brown-eyed workers, yes. There may be a possibility that companies hire a number of blue eyes employees, hence the higher probability of them being late. Brown eyes equals to punctuality because of statistics. They will discriminate against blue-eyed people. There are too many variables. That's a problem. Blue-eye workers will not be hired due to unrelated statistical conclusions. Discriminate blue-eye workers. Employers will hire more workers with brown eyes according to the data. Employers may prefer the workers with brown eyes because the rate of being late for them is statistically low. They would hire more brown eyes workers because they just can observe workers with two different color eyes. They just can use this statistic to find out who is punctual. So I think most of you got the point. The key challenge here is how can we distinguish between outright discrimination against blue-eyed people versus this statistical discrimination that it is true that you could actually collect data and find that brown-eyed people are more punctual than blue-eyed people. But because you cannot observe punctuality, so you're forced to use this unrelated but correlated. So this is irrelevant. I mean, frankly speaking, no worker or customer cares about your eye color, but it is somehow related to a personal characteristic that the firms value a lot. So that's the challenge here. And this is what we call statistical discrimination. I treat different people with different characteristics differently based on my data or my conclusion from statistics. Yeah. Okay, now this is the last part of the chapter. So suppose to eliminate wage differential because of discrimination. So the government says, hey, let's create a panel and to decide what job should pay people. So people with similar skills and education would earn similar amount of salary. Suppose the goal is here. So we acknowledge there's discrimination. So now we form a panel to try to fix this. The panel would decide that this job would get this amount, that job would earn that amount. Okay, so suppose administrative assistant and a truck driver are judged by this panel that they require the same level of education and skills. However, currently, administrative workers are earning 30,000 NT dollars per month, while a truck driver earns 40,000 NT dollars. So what would happen to the quantity supplied and demand in the market for administrative assistants and truck drivers if the panel says now both professions, because they require the same skill and education level, so they should all earn 35,000 NT dollars per month. So that's the first question. The next question is, so what would happen to the level of effort and natural ability of the workers available in each market of the previous question? What would happen to the quality of work generated in each market? And part C, suppose it is true that the skills and education required to do each job are in fact nearly identical. So what explanation would an economist likely propose to explain why the equilibrium wage differs by 10,000 NT dollars per month across these two markets? All right, so let's take a look. All right, first question. So suppose administrative assistants earn 30K, truck drivers earn 40K. What would happen to the quantities supplied and demanded in the market for administrative assistants and truck drivers if the wage for these two professions were set by law at 35K? So there'll be a surplus for both, a shortage for both, or surplus for this one, or shortage for the other one. So now let's look at your answers. So a lot of you say there will be a surplus of administrative assistants, but a shortage of truck drivers, and that is the right answer. So let's take a look. So here you have the original market, administrative workers, administrative assistant in the left. So here the equilibrium wage is 30K, and for truck drivers it's 40K, that's in the right. So now you require everybody, both markets, to have a wage of 35K. And of course, that means that you are pushing away from the equilibrium wages of both markets. So you have a surplus where you have excess supply. So more quantity supplied than quantity demanded for the administrative assistants. And you have a shortage or less or excess demand, so less workers willing to take this job, but more firms willing to hire these workers in the truck driver market. All right, so next question. So what would happen to the level and effort or natural ability of the workers available in these two markets? What would happen to the quality of work generated in each market? And here there may be more than one answer. So you're allowed to give two or more answers in this one. So hardworking, high-ability workers will be attracted to the truck driving market or the administrative assistant market, or avoid these two markets. So the answer is that the administrative assistant market will attract more hardworking, high-ability workers, so quantity would go up, but they would avoid the truck driving market, and so the quality there will be reduced. Okay, so suppose it is true that the skills and education required to do each job are nearly identical. What explanation would an economist likely propose to explain why equilibrium wages differ by 10K per month across these two markets? So compensating differential, superstar phenomenon, signaling theory, human capital theory of education, discrimination. Okay, so a lot of you say compensating differentials, and that is correct. I mean, if you think of it, a truck driver would be working outdoors and maybe long hours, driving on the road, which is dangerous. Compared to that, an administrative worker will be working the regular hours, sitting in office, and so it could be a more pleasant environment to work in. Okay, so to summarize, Here we're talking about how wages could deviate from equilibrium. And so the examples here, there could be above equilibrium wages that are due to minimum wage laws, unions, or efficiency wages. There could be wage differentials resulting from compensating differentials, human capital. There are other unobserved characteristics like ability, effort, and chance, but it's not easy to measure those. And then we talked about the signaling theory of education, saying that more educated workers would earn higher wages because if you're smarter, if you have a high ability, then going to a good school or attending more education as a signal to show to the employers that you are the high type. But what this means is that if you increase the number of people, increase the population that attend college or attend graduate school, that would not raise the overall level of wages. And in some sense, in the raw data, you might see something like that, at least in Taiwan. But what I do want to stress is that because this is a transition, so there are a lot of differences between people who hold a college degree in Taiwan versus people who hold, say, a more advanced degree, or people who only have high school diploma or some junior college degree. And so you have to control for all these other things in order to make a clear conclusion on whether or not the wages in Taiwan does or does not depend on education level. And then finally, we talked about discrimination. And of course, sometimes it's very difficult to measure discrimination. You could see, say, gender discrimination, racial discrimination, which could be just statistical discrimination. However, the competitive market can solve discrimination by the employer, but not by the government or by the consumers. Okay, and so this is my one-page summary of this chapter when we talk about earnings and discrimination. So in the previous chapter, we see that wages equal to VMPL. That's our benchmark. The deviation from the benchmarks can be explained by job characteristics, personal traits, education level, or just outright discrimination. Yeah, so that's the main essence of this chapter. So here's the homework questions, and you can see how much I love this from the past finals. These are the challenge questions. And so we should end this chapter here. Okay, directly I'm going to Classroom Experiment 12, Screening and Signaling. So CHT Incorporation offers 2 cell phone plans. Plan A, $1 per minute. Plan B, monthly fee of $168. Then you can call 300 minutes free. And then it's $1.50 per minute. So please look at your student ID number. Depending on the last digit of your student ID number, you could be one of these people. And the question is, which plan is cheaper for you? So if your student ID number, the last digit is either 0, 1, or 2, then your usage is less than 100 minutes per month. If your student ID number is 3, 4, 5, then you use 200 to 300 minutes per month. And if student ID number last digit is 6 or 7, then your usage is 400 to 500 minutes. If your student ID number is 8 or 9, the last digit, then your usage is 600 to 700 minutes. So the question is, depending on your usage, so which plan is cheaper for you? Okay, so now please join. So which one are you? So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9. That are the 4 different types. And the question is, which plan is cheaper for you? Okay, so we see answers here. So if you are using less than 100 minutes per month, that'll be like my wife. She never calls, she never uses her cell phone. Okay, so if you choose plan A, you spend less than $100 NT. If you use plan B, you spend $168 per month, but you never use up to the limit. So it's better if you choose plan A. Suppose you use 200 to 300 minutes. So if you use plan A, you're going to spend 200 to 300 NT dollars per month. But if you use plan B, you pay only 168, and you use close to the limit of the free minutes. But if you don't exceed 300 minutes per month, then you're fine. You just pay 168. So you choose plan B. Next one. So if you are the person who uses 400 to 500 minutes, that sounds like my former students. So if you choose plan A, you pay 400 to 500 NT dollars per month. But if you choose plan B, so how much do you pay? You pay 168 for the first 300 minutes. And so for the remaining 100 to 200 minutes, you're going to pay $150 to $300. So that means that you're paying $318 up to $468. And all of this is right below the $400 to $500 amount you will pay for plan A. So if you're that type, you should choose plan A. Finally, if you use 600 to 700 minutes, then you're like my former students who are in love. So you call your significant other like every day. Or if you're like Li Hong Wang, who needs to call like dozens of people every day. Okay, so now if you choose plan A, you spend 600 to 700 NT dollars. But if you choose plan B, so you pay 168 for the first 300 minutes, but then for the remaining 300 to 400 minutes, you need to pay $450 to $600. And so that means you're paying $518 to $768. So that's all exceeding the 600 to 700 NT dollars if you choose plan A. So in that case, if you're this callaholic, then you would have to choose plan A. So this is what we call a screening device. So here we have a set of rules, different cell phone plans, and everybody's trying to optimize. So of course the question is, which one would save you money? One thing you should also think about is how you should react to other people optimizing. In this example, there's not much you need to choose. This is an individual choice. But in reality, you can think of different situations, especially if you have a significant other, you want to be in the same plan or in the plan where you have free minutes within the same network. Like if both of you are on CHT Incorporation, or both of you go to Taiwan Star or whatever your favorite cell phone provider, so that you get unlimited free minutes between the two of you. And of course, if you think of a lot of promotions, there will be, so if you open up a new line, then we'll give you a free iPhone 13, although you have to sign a contract with us for 2 years or 3 years, things like that. So you have to think about what other people are doing in some of these cases. Then, so given these three things, so here is a set of rules. You're optimizing, you have to react to other people optimizing. So you should ask, what does the theory say? What should the aggregate data look like? And here we have what we call a separating equilibrium, where if you are the people who use 200 to 300 minutes or 300 to 400 minutes, so you would choose plan A. But if you are the people who use less than 100 or more than 600 minutes, then you should choose plan B. Okay, so that's theory. And then you ask, does the empirical data match the theory? And so in your answers, most of you got the questions correct. And so you are choosing the right one. You might make a mistake. You might be signing up with a plan that's not suitable for you. But hopefully, when your contract expires, we will switch to a more appropriate plan. And then you can ask, wait a minute, could people be doing different things? Well, that's possible. Of course, the question is, why are you thinking differently compared to other people? I remember a student said that even though I'm using less than 100 minutes, but I expect to be in love in the next year or two, so I need some space, right? Yeah, but now I think, I don't know, maybe nowadays everybody just calls each other online, and so minutes are not important anymore. But yeah, you never know. Up to here, you can think as like an engineer. how can this institution or this set of rules be improved? If you are the marketing manager of CHT Incorporation, how would you try to attract more customers? And then the last thing is more of a historical or humanity question of where did this institution come from? And did the cell phone companies copy this from other countries, or did they copy it from each other? Those are the questions. Okay, so for the screening device, the key thing is differentiation. So you want some customers to choose plan A, others to choose plan B. So you can think of almost all of the marketing campaigns are like this, where you target specific groups. So for example, if you think of real cell phone plans, I'm not sure if you ever tried to walk into a cell phone store to look for a cell phone plan. I mean, plan A versus plan B is the easiest. I mean, it's way too simplified. I mean, if you go into the store, they'll give you like 10 dozens of plans. And then it's like you're just completely confused. Luckily, for most of you, you get the cheapest deal. You get the best deal because you get the student plan that gives you unlimited internet and so on at a very low price. Similarly, if you're switching cell phone service providers, say if you want to switch from CHT to Taiwan Star or vice versa, if you're jumping around, then you also get a very good deal. If you go to other industries, you will see buy one, get one free. There you see how they try to separate customers. Because if you go to Starbucks and you get buy one, I think they have a Christmas campaign in Starbucks, buy one, get one free. Who will go to get buy one, get one free? Well, if you're single for Christmas Eve, you're left out. But if you go with your significant other, then of course you can enjoy buy one, get one free. As far as I know, during these special campaigns, so the Starbucks next to the university, like the one next to the back door of NTU, you would see students standing at the door, single, waiting for another single student to come along so that both of you can enjoy buy one, get one free. Yeah, so that's a one-day good friend. Okay, if you think of it, when you go to look for jobs, you face similar things. The HR department would screen people's resumes based on certain criteria. And of course, so if you come from NTU versus some other university, or in the US, if you come from the Ivy League, or if you have high GPA, or if you have certain extracurriculum activities. I know that NTU students love to host or attend the GIS. So if the HR people are looking for these things, then the students would attend these activities or try to achieve these things in order to pass the screening. Okay, so here's another one. Yeah, so expect your salary to differ. So if you graduate from National I-Taiwan University, you get 35K. So if your student ID number is odd, then you're from National I-Taiwan University, so you get 35K. But if your student ID number last digit is even, you get only 22K because you're from private Salty Chicken University. But you can choose, should you apply for graduate school at National I-Taiwan University after you graduate. So your expected salary will be 40K, but you need to repay student loans at 5K per month. So would you or advise your friend to apply for National I-Taiwan University graduate school? And why? Okay, so here's the question. If your student ID number last digit is odd, then you're a bachelor's from National I-Taiwan University. But if it's even, you're a bachelor's from private Salty Chicken University. So which one you are, and do you want to apply for National I-Taiwan University's master's program? Okay, so if you made your choice, let's take a look. Okay, so things are pretty diverse. If you are National I-Taiwan University bachelor's, some of you say you will not apply, others say you will apply. And if you're from Salty Chicken, overwhelmingly people choose to apply, although some also choose not to. Yeah, actually this is a survey question. There is no definite right and wrong answer here. Yeah, because 35K equals to 40K minus 5K. So the math is the same. All right, so here, this is a signaling game. The set of rules is this credentialism in the job market or in the society. And when you optimize, you have to think, wait a minute, which choice is better for me on the job market? Should I apply for graduate school and graduate as National Taiwan University Masters, or is my current bachelor's degree enough? But then here you have to react to other people optimizing. And the key problem here is that if everybody applies for a master's program, would the salary be the same? That's a big problem. And okay, so there is a pooling equilibrium where that says that everybody should get a master's program. Although for National Taiwan University undergrads, well, you're indifferent because 35K equals to 40 minus 5K. So that's what theory predicts. And the question is, does empirical data match the theory? As your survey results showed, most of the private salty chicken university graduates did decide to apply for graduate school, but National Taiwan University graduates are split. So of course the next question is, can these individual differences be explained? If you are a National Taiwan University bachelor's, so what were you thinking? Why would you choose to apply for graduate school or not to apply for graduate school? Here, monthly salary is roughly the same, but then you can have other considerations. You might think that, hey, I want to learn something else. I want to learn more. So if I spend 4 years and that's not enough, maybe I should spend another 2 or 3 years in the master's program. Of course, you can say, oh no, because I hate my major. I want to switch to different major, or I want to be what they call nowadays interdisciplinary. So I would need a master's. But it could also be that, hey, say you think, oh no, why should I waste 2 more years? I mean, I could go start working, and when my former classmates get their masters, well, I already have 2 years of working experience, and now I'm ready to switch to a better job and get a higher pay. And so, of course, here you have a lot of different concerns that you can talk about, and of course, hence making different decisions. And here, of course, you can ask the question, how can the institution be improved? So, and of course, here the mindset could be different if you were an employer or compared to if you are the Minister of Education. I mean, if you're the minister, you have to think, is it really a good idea that everybody's applying for graduate school, but the salary is the same? And okay, finally, you can ask the question, where on earth did this institution system come from? In Taiwan, of course, we have this, you can talk about good tradition or bad tradition of the imperial examination system that has stemmed for 1,000 years. All right, so here, regarding signaling, the key thing is you need to stand out. So you have to show that, so you have the signal that other people do not have. Hence, you prove you're the high type. And so you're trying to convince you or your product is better. So examples here, you can think of a lot of products have what we call certificate of origin. Recently, they just proposed that all of the eggs should imprint the origin or the ID number of all of these eggs. Maybe you'll see QR codes on the eggs very quickly so that people can verify that these eggs are coming from a healthy chicken or whatever origin. Similarly, you can think about different credentials or so we have these MIT logos to show that these are made in Taiwan instead of made in other countries that might signal lower quality. Actually, people try to study this. They find that if you buy tea that's claimed to be MIT, those command a higher price compared to tea that are made in China. But then the trick question is, how would consumers treat, say, tea made in Vietnam? And in fact, it's in the middle. And so you have this problem that there will be firms trying to export Chinese tea to Vietnam, repackage it, and then ship it to Taiwan. And consumers would treat this tea made in Vietnam, and which commands a higher price from the made in China tea. When you do job interviews, so how would you demonstrate your qualification? That's also a very important signal. They have these stories about, so you're not supposed to talk about salary during a job interview. Well, it could go both ways, right? I mean, if you start to talk about salary, say that I'm confident that based on I'm from National Taiwan University, the best department that you can imagine, so you should give me a higher salary, a premium. And of course, if the other side buys this, then you'll get a good job, you'll get high pay. If they do not, then that's a problem. Actually, very recently, there was this incident that a job candidate talked about how a local high-tech company in Taiwan mistreated him during a job interview. And okay, one thing I do want to say is that if you're in business or econ or finance or whatever, a lot of you love to try to get an MBA immediately after college. I would recommend otherwise. Because the program design for MBAs, I do have a lot of friends, especially a lot of econ PhDs actually teach in business schools. The MBA program design is made so that you basically reteach what you learned during undergraduate economics. But there are two differences. The first thing is that, so they expect you to have like 10 years or even more working experience. Because MBAs are for people who are CEOs to be or plan to become, say, executives. And so you have this working experience. So first thing is that you get to review what you learned in college. That was like 10 years ago. But you relearn it with your working experience in order to tie what's in the textbook and what's in the field. And the second thing is that you get to network with all the future CEOs, future CFOs. But if you just graduated from college, then there's no point to relearn what you have because you have no working experience to tie this with. And all your classmates are future CEOs, CFOs, but who are you? And so the only benefit is to donate to education industry. Thank you very much. All right, I do have some suggestions. Actually, one question here is, what course are you taking? Because your GPA serves for two purposes. One is to signal that you are a smart and responsible student, and the other is to reflect the knowledge and ability that you accumulate in college. To signal you are a smart and responsible student, taking any course is sufficient because getting into NTU is so difficult. But to reflect knowledge and abilities you learned in college, if you're only getting sweet and cheap GE courses, that you spend 0 hours every week to study, then what does that tell people? That's a real problem. And the contrast is that if you take a tough course and you only get a C, then there's this trade-off that do you want to show a good GPA that is contained mainly of these sweet courses, or is it better to take the challenge? Well, you might fail. It's not that you all get all C's, but you will get some successes, but some classes you will fail. And in NTU Econ, there is actually the road to heaven versus the deadly triangle in terms of intermediate macroeconomics, and statistics and econometrics. So the question is, what would you want to choose? That is a real challenge. And my own suggestion is that you should take the challenge. My colleague, Gu Huiwen and Luo Mingqing, they have a reputation to give very tough courses. These are very challenging intermediate microeconomics, and so you should try to take the challenge. In the third year, well, you should take Wu Chongming's class. This is a capstone class on presentation and writing, or Po Han's class on game theory and strategic thinking. Or you should take some language courses. I do personally recommend taking English composition because most freshmen are required to take writing and communication. So these English composition classes are like the writing courses in most other universities in the US. And there are some exchange programs that you should apply for. The econ department has BSET, so a visiting program with Berkeley. And the Ministry of Education actually has this other SAPFS that funds you to go to Berkeley, Wisconsin Medicine, or UCL, or some of these top universities. If you really want to try econ graduate school, so you should try to take the first year graduate micro, macro, and econometric theory classes. Or when you get to your third year or fourth year, you should try to take some master level electives. So if you think of it, the entrance exam for a master's program is second year intermediate micro, intermediate macro, and econometrics. So after you finish second year courses, well, you have a third year and a fourth year. So why not just use those years to study just like what you do in the master's program? There's no reason why you cannot do that. Actually, if I were in the master's application interviews, if you are from NTU, I always ask, what are the things that you could have done but did not do during your third and fourth year in college that you have to spend another 2 years in master's program to do? I mean, why didn't you do it in your third and fourth year? We actually have earlier admissions. If you do finish some of these graduate courses, then you get earlier admission to the master's program. More generally, what I do think is that you should try to take electives as broadly as possible to find your interests. One thing I do recommend is to do summer interns, either in the industry or to try to be the full-time RA if you're thinking of academic careers. One thing I do want to say is that if you do this in the industry, I highly recommend you do this in the summer, not during the school year. Why? Because in the summer, you can devote yourself full-time to the intern job, like say 40 hours per week. But during the school year, you might only be able to go to the intern like say 1 or 2 days per week, and you won't really learn anything. Yeah, because for the company, what they really want is you to finish something within a couple weeks or at most 1 or 2 months instead of coming and going like every Friday or something. You will learn way more if you do the internship in the summer compared to if you do this once a week. The other thing is after you sample broadly, what you really want to do is to focus on one field and sharpen your skills. You need to forge your secret weapon. One secret that you can use is to try to look at the required courses of other majors and try to take those courses. These core courses are tough, but if you know these subjects from another major, that will be your secret weapon. Why? Because when you graduate, how would you show or distinguish yourself from your classmates? Well, if you're an econ major or if you're a finance major, then the interviewer would ask you, what else do you know? I mean, why should I hire you instead of your classmate? Well, you're both NTU econ majors or NTU finance majors. And you say, oh, in addition to business, I also know programming. Well, that would be something special. Of course, vice versa, right? I mean, if you are a EE major, you say, hey, but I also know all of these things about finance. Then, of course, that distinguishes yourself from your peers. The other thing I think is also important is to try to develop general skills. The first one is logical reasoning. They have this saying that in Taiwan, especially in the political debate, there's only partisan positions, either green or blue or something like that. And there's no real discussion. But I think that stems from the problem that a lot of the people in Taiwan do not have the ability to do logical reasoning. Empirically, I know of only 2 courses that can help you develop this skill. The first one is English composition. That's the required course of the Foreign Language and Literature department. And the other is Introduction to Real Analysis. If you can survive one of these courses, then you would get the ability. The other one is communication. So this is both writing and oral presentation. Actually, a lot of these courses provided by NTU's Writing Center try to develop these skills. And of course, there are these oral presentation courses that you should try them out as well. The last one is programming skills. Well, depending on your favorite. I mean, I think the key thing, nowadays they talk about this as computational thinking. So what language you learn is much less important than knowing how to program. I remember the real serious language I learned and continue to practice, I learned from high school, is LaTeX. You almost surely have not heard of LaTeX because it is a programming language to typeset documents, books, research papers, journal articles, and so on. And it's so beautiful. So the interesting thing was when I went to college, And I said, oh no, I don't know how to program C or MATLAB or whatever language, your favorite programming language. And my classmate told me, hey, you know how to program in LaTeX. That means you know how to program in C. Frankly speaking, I still don't know how to program in C, but I know how to program. That I have the computational thinking that I can use to apply to whatever language that I eventually use. So later I programmed in MATLAB, in Stata, and so on. But nowadays, a lot of people use Python or R. Well, I mean, new languages come out. I think the latest is to try to program in Julia. That's much faster and efficient compared to the other languages. Well, but I think the key thing is that once you learn how to program in one language, this is a transferable ability that you can carry yourself and quickly pick up a new language when you need it. All right, so actually I wrote this before I saw this picture. So this is from McKinsey talking about the T-shaped skill profile. So you need a breadth of essential skills and then a depth of expertise. So you need to sample, even in college, you should sample a lot of electives to build up a breadth in essential skills. But then you need to forge your secret weapon and get deep into a particular expertise and to make sure that you have a secret weapon. Okay, so if you're really interested in microeconomics, you should take Calculus 4. Yeah, because that's calculus with applications in economics. And after you master intermediate microeconomics, you should take microtheory. If you like my experiments I'm going to run, you should sign up for TASO, that you can earn money by being subjects in the TASO lab. And you can take experimental economics and start to do research with me. Actually, there were students in their first year, after taking this class, they started, hey, so how can I do research with you? And they do very well later on. If you want to apply for graduate school, I would say take these 3 classes. This is all math major required courses. Introduction to Real Analysis. If you can only take one, take this class. If you can take a second, take Linear Algebra from the math department. And then if you have both of these, the third class is Advanced Statistical Inference. And then the other thing is that take 2 years of English compositions from the FLLD department. I think you have to be a major or a minor in linguistics to take this. I was lucky enough to be one of the first people in NTU to be a minor in linguistics or foreign languages, and so I took 2 years of this, and I think I got lifetime warranty on that. It's very good. So last thing, Merry Christmas. So it's Christmas Eve, so I brought some books to share to people who did really well in the midterm. The first book is Are Underachieving Colleges? So this is written by Devery Book, which is a former president of Harvard University. So he's talking about the US universities, but a lot of the things do apply to Taiwan as well. If you think the US schools are still underachieving, then NTU is still even more underachieving. There is a Chinese translation, so if you prefer the Chinese translation, I can also substitute that for you. Then I have How to Get Better Grade and Have More Fun. I'm showing you the Chinese translation because I wrote an introduction to this book, so I'm proud. I actually wrote this when I was an undergrad. Actually, I really love this book because I picked up this book right before classes started in the first year when I was at NTU. And I found this one of the most useful books because I applied all of the principles I've learned in this book. If you want the English version, I also have that. This is also a very old book, but I think very good. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I have the Chinese translation. And unfortunately, I don't have the English translation at hand, but if you force me, I'll try to order one, but then you won't get it immediately. Here I have another one, Secrets of the Money Lab. So this is a person who worked in HP to run experiments. More recently, so Danny Kahneman published Noise, A Flaw in Human Judgment. So here I have the Chinese translation if you want this book. This is a recent publication by Danny Kahneman and Kees Sunston. Both of them are my favorite authors. I have no comment on the Chinese translation of Danny's other book, Thinking Fast and Slow, but I think this one, the translation is good enough. Then if you're from Taiwan, then I have two other Chinese books. One is Market Design, or How to Design Market Mechanisms. This one is originally from Japanese, so unfortunately there is no English translation yet, but this translation I think is pretty good. I also wrote an introduction to this one, so I really recommend this. The last one is a book that was published this year by three of my colleagues. This is about the central bank policy. Unfortunately, this one is only in Chinese. They don't have an English translation yet, but you should bug my three colleagues if you hope to see an English translation.